Okay, it's not meant to make high quality videos or anything like that. So it's the files are actually the benefit of that is that the files are actually pretty small. So if I'm sharing this and recording it, what it means that everything that I've got on this screen is now going to be included in the video. Okay. So I'm going to use that to make this video so that if Josh and Dominic need to see what we talked about this afternoon, that they can. So we're talking about what we need to do for homework over the holidays. So as you know, we couldn't finish all the assessments that's required to get the subjects we've been working on. So what we've decided is that we'll get the assignment part 1 done, which is the planning and designing part of it. And then the second part will be submitted after the break. And also when you come back, there's a couple other things as well. So let me just make a list. So I'll make a list just so it's clearly visible. So of the things we have to get done when we come back, submit assignment part 2, which is the build VMs assignment. When we come back, we will also be doing the 5 ICW practical. That is actually the harder one. But if you've been doing your assignment, it should prepare you well for the practical test as well. And that's going to be on VMs. So it's actually going to be on your virtual machines that you're using now, the Server 1 and the Server 2, as well as the Windows 10 client. There's also a 5 ICW theory test, and this is really a straightforward test. It's basically some knowledge evidence that you need to supply instead of making you write it down in an assignment. It's just going to be multiple choice questions, but they're very straightforward, okay, generally. So that's what we're going to do, and that should get us that workstation fundamentals subject, as well as the server install and configure Windows Server subject, TAFE assessments. But don't forget, we also have certifications to do. Okay, so we've done all the MOS certification. That's what we want to end up being tomorrow, by the end of tomorrow. All your MOS exams done and passed. But we also want to do the MTAs. Okay, so the MTA, first one we're going to do is the Windows OS fundamentals. So that's the Windows 10 MTA. And the MTA for the server fundamentals. Oops. Okay, so server fundamentals, and basically we're going to do that first week back. Okay, so when we come back basically in February, start of February, and tomorrow when we do the enrollments, you'll be told exactly the dates and times. It'll probably be Thursday and Friday as well, full-day classes. But you won't have me all day. Probably a good thing for you guys. You get sick of me, but you'll have a couple of lecturers taking over. That way, it's you don't get sick of one person. But let's just be sure what we have to do. Okay, so I want to give you a heads up so we know each part, we understand it, and what we have to do for it. So let's have a quick look at the assignment part 2, so we can understand what needs to be done again. So I know I've spoken about this, but let's have a look again. So if you remember, for this particular combination of the two, I've placed the assignment files in this WOSF Learn site instead of the other one, because I didn't want to confuse any students who are studying that as part of their normal studies. So, yeah, here we go. So if we go to assessments, so if you remember, that was the part 1 that you got to hand up tomorrow, and this is the part 2 that we're talking about. So if we look at what you have to do, how would I do this assignment? First of all, if you remember, this is a scenario where it's a Earthy's confectionery. It's a lolly factory. They have various workstations, but they don't have servers, and part of your solution, this is someone else's solution, not necessarily yours. This solution requires you to build these virtual machines. Okay, they'd be In this case, they're VMware virtual machines. In real life, they could be Hyper-V virtual machines or vSphere virtual machines or some other thing. Okay, so we've got a domain controller, we've got a DHCP server, we've got a file server, we've got a WSUS server. Okay, right in the first, when I actually went through this, that might have not all made sense to you, but at this stage, it should make some sense at least. So Active Directory, DHCP giving out IP addresses, file server, as in where your files are stored and shared, and the WSUS, the Windows Security Update Server. And this is a Windows workstation. Okay, you'll see that there's a couple of workstations you need to do. So for this part, you just need to think about the task you need to do. Okay, there's no real right or wrong answers. Just like, you know, someone could just spend 5 seconds thinking about it and not put much effort in it at all, or someone is actually going to think about, you know, the deployment. Which one would I do first? Do I go deploy WSUS before I even have a domain controller? Probably not. Okay, so just like in real life, you're going to order the things you're going to do first. Okay, so in real life, the situation might be that you have physical servers you might install into the workplace. You might need to configure these physical servers if they are like Hyper-Vs or vSphere. And then after that, you might be creating the virtual machines. Maybe you start off with a domain controller. Then you might start to go and configure the file shares and Active Directory and stuff. Then whatever order you come up with. Okay. So now estimate a time. How long do you think it'll take? Okay. To be honest, it's not going to be truly accurate because it's a guess almost. But we always start with a plan. The plan is to drive to Melbourne. Well, we've got 5 stops in order to get there. We were trying to get to maybe the Tail and Bend stop by tea time, morning tea time. Well, that's our plan. We might not actually get there on time, but that's the plan. So this is the plan. So it's not fixed in stone that you have to achieve that in that time. It's just an estimation. Just like if you're going to build someone a fence, they're going to ask, how long do you think it'll take? Well, if everything works out perfectly, maybe just a half a day. But there might be things that you can count halfway through, like you weren't expecting. So if we're going to build someone's fence, we need to tell them that we're going to go to your property on this day and this time, and we're going to do it, because you're not just going to randomly show up anytime you like and start digging holes and building a fence without your client knowing about it, would you? So this is basically proposing a time to access the site, and this services and its downtime. So basically, if we're going to build that fence, maybe it's going to impact on your ability to use your driveway or park your cars or access your house for the front door. Well, that's something I have to tell you in advance, don't I? If you're expecting to park your car in the garage and you can't access it during that time, then that's a big impact to you. But if you're told ahead of time, then you can maybe plan around it. So the key thing that you need to do with this is have the tasks, and what you need to do after that is actually create a short recording. Okay, it doesn't have to include your face like I'm doing now with the Skype for Business. It can include just your display of this table. And what you need to do is actually just explain some of the tasks. It shouldn't take too long. And what you need to do is actually propose those times and dates and ask if they're suitable. Because there's nothing worse than saying, I'm coming on these times, and then the client go, oh, no, I won't even be there. I've got other people doing some other work there. You can't access the building, and you're not actually clarifying that. Okay? So for this part, that's what you need to do. Populate this table with some reasonable tasks and estimations of time and whatever, and then create a video making sure you're confirming the time is adequate or suitable, and explaining a bit about what you're doing. If you remember, we talked about IP configuration. So this is the IP addressing we're going to use. And we said that this number, this YY, was going to be your day of birth. So for me, that might have been 17 in that octet. So the reason why we have different ones for everyone is that it's individualized. And the domain we're going to use is yoursurname.com. Okay, for me, it's going to be ec_zhao.com. For you, it's wherever your surname is. And then we have virtual machines, the domain controller, the file server, the DHCP server, the WSUS server. And obviously the client computers. And you can see they got various hardware. and they've got a specific IP address allocated to them. So how would I prove that I've done this correctly? Because I'm not going to be there checking your work as you're doing it because it's on holidays. The easiest way to do this is actually to create a screenshot. So if you remember, if I look at this Windows Server 2000, Server 2, you can see this tells me the virtual hardware. If I actually do a print screen or use the snipping tool, I can actually say, hey, for this one, I'm going to snip this part of it. I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to put it into my document. So the easiest way is to go to this document and just put it in next to what I'm trying to do, what you're trying to prove. Okay, at the end of the day, I'm not going to ask for step-by-step instructions or step-by-step pictures. I'm asking for the picture that proves you've done it correctly. It could be the last step. It could be the step, like for example, I didn't show you how to create a virtual machine, but I did show you the virtual hardware here. Well, that shows me that you've got whatever hard drives, network cards, etc. Then if we're talking about the IP addressings, it could be as simple as, instead of actually, it could be many ways, but one way it could be just that you go here and again you do the snipping tool, and I'm gonna just take this. What that's gonna show me is that I've named it correctly, I've got my domain correct, and I've got my IP addressing correct. And again, I might go into my document and I might say right here underneath the Windows, the domain controller, I might just say, hey, that proves that. Okay, format it however you want. Make sure it's sensibly organized. You've got the skills now with the MOS stuff to help you format it. So the way we're going to prove that you've done things correctly is that you have this the screenshots. So, but the problem is if you don't show me, or I can't see the thing I'm looking for, then I can't give you the marks. You know what I mean? So I'm not saying go overboard, snapshot everything, but give me the part that proves it conclusively. Okay, so now if we're talking about RAID, that would, if you look at this, the RAID, we're going to configure the domain controller with mirroring. And where would I find instructions on how to do that? Well, if I go to my course, and if you remember, we looked at storage, didn't we? So if we looked at storage, here's the worksheet on storage. And here is the instructions. Okay, not all instructions is required for the assignment, so don't try to do everything in it. The trick or the competency part of it is picking out which part is important for what I want to do. If you try to do everything that's in here, you're not going to get it right. I can tell you that. But the part that you do need to know is the part that's relevant to what we're talking about. We're talking about mirroring the C drive, right? Well, do we actually mirror the C drive somewhere here? I believe we do. So if you look at this, oh, look at this. I think it's even in here. Starting from here, converting to a dynamic disk, create a mirror volume. That's the instructions, right? So basically, I'm not telling you go, for this part at least, we're not sending you in blind. We've got the resources for you. Go find it, find the section you need for doing that part of it in the worksheets we've been giving you. Right, so the parity volume, you know that's a little bit different than the RAID 5. If you remember, that was parity volume was in the advanced storage, where we created a storage pool, and then we created a virtual disk, and we chose parity layout. So again, if I actually do a Control F is for find. If I actually looked up parity, if you look at this, we've got a couple of steps beforehand, but then afterwards it talks about creating a parity layout disk. So again, picking the right spot for the assignment. And it pretty much, we can go through that all. Okay, all pretty most of the steps, like for example, creating the Active Directory organizational units. These are the departments. Creating the OUs for the departments. Well, really, it's each department is an OU. It's given you there. So I've got a OU for sales and marketing, an OU for this, and an OU for that. I think if you go to worksheet 2 or 3, you'll find the instructions for that. This naming convention is a little bit different. We don't give you any worksheets for that, but if you look at it, it's actually developing a naming policy. It's policy is a rule, right? So basically, it's a way of doing things. I bet you at your workplace, there's a rule of how you create users, what they're named, and how they're named. I bet you at your workplace, you've got a naming convention for your computers. Okay, so if you don't have a workplace, take TAFEs. Okay, here, our username is your first name dot your surname, and if there's 2 people with the same number, like Nick Smith, what number are you? Number 12. Okay, and if you look at our computers here, like I showed you before, we have computer names, but they're just not random garble, even though it looks like it. It's actually ADL, location, site, A103, room number, and this S603111, asset register ID, asset ID. So that's our naming convention. If you don't have much of an imagination, why don't you just reword that? You could just basically describe what we do here at TAFE or what you do at your workplace, and that would be your naming convention, as long as you got one for users names and one for computer names. You get me? But to be honest, if you look at computer names, I've almost even given you a naming convention. You see this XX, don't worry about that because that's to individualize you. But if you look at that, it represents the site, ADL, and then the 4-letter code for major function for servers. But what about the workstations? Okay, ADLWS, they're not all going to be called ADLWS, are they? So there could be ADLWS, and if this belonged to sales, it could be S something or other. Okay, or it could be research and development, or be RD something or other. That could be what you do. It doesn't matter. The thing is, as long as you have a rule. It doesn't matter if you copy the rule from a best practice from your workplace, from anywhere. The key thing is having a rule, having a policy. So now creating organizational units, like I said, we can find that in worksheet 3. Creating users, I think that's worksheet 3 with home directories. I think that is in worksheet 3 again. So if we look at worksheet 3, it's managing Active Directory. If we actually look at worksheet 3, it talks all about creating users, organizational units, and groups. And if we keep on looking at users, you can see we do logon hours, which is not actually required, but we also do home directories, don't we? Well, I think it's somewhere. Let me see if I can find it. So if I was a student and I don't know how to create a home directory, maybe I'll just go Control F, home, directories. Look. So under profile, home directory, connect, and this is the string we do. If you don't understand what that actually means, it actually means that this is what's called a UNC. That means on a network, find a computer called server 1. So if your computer is not called server 1, you wouldn't be typing server 1 there. You'd be typing whatever the name of your computer is. Then there's a shared name on that computer called homes. Well, if yours is called users instead of homes, that's what you put. Then this percent username percent is actually just substitute, insert here the username of the user we're creating. So basically, we're going to create a folder for that user. Okay, so and then it talks about creating templates, but with the templates, what you need to show me is something that makes the template useful. So if you just create a template with nothing in it, it's pointless. Okay, a template with the home directory defined, maybe the group membership defined, makes it more useful. But you have to show me something you've done in the template that makes it more useful. Otherwise, the template is pointless. Then it talks about creating users. Where's the users? The users are actually at the back of the assignment in Appendix A. You can see these are the users. These are their descriptions, which should sort of put them in the right department, if you can read that. And just to clarify, a research worker, R&D worker, is equivalent to a research assistant in the hierarchy. Okay, so there's manager who manages these workers and assistants. Okay, they might have different titles, but they're equivalent. And that's what you might find in a real place. They might have different titles, but they're equivalent level in the hierarchy. And then we create groups. Don't forget, the key thing here is AGDLP. Okay, so I think Greg called it a good loop. And that's accounts in global groups, which are members of domain local groups, which we give permissions to, which passes back to global groups, which passes back to accounts. So there's 2 layers of groups. So again, if you look at your file and print service, there's a worksheet. You'll notice that this worksheet walks you through an example where you are TAFE, you've got student and lecturers, and you've got a student files folder. And then your lecturers need modify and your students need read only. But you notice that we have a global group which represents the type of users. We have a domain local group which represents the resource and the access level. So each resource you create, whether that's a shared folder, shared printer, you need to create a domain local group. If they have different levels of access, you need to create a domain local group for each level of access. Then you put in whatever global groups need that access level of that resource. So this walks you through that student lecturer scenario. But really, if we're looking at our assignment, we're talking about, if we look at resource sharing, we're talking about EC documents. Okay, who needs access, really? Who needs access? You need to read down a bit. So let's see, here it is. All users must have read to EC documents, but Office administration users need modify. So again, that's 2 different types of access, isn't it? Well, if I was a smart person, maybe I'll take that lecturer student example and student files and maybe just change the groups, change the names, change the folder names, and it's pretty much this example, isn't it? You get me? I'm taking that example, I'm changing the group names, I'm changing the folder name, but pretty much it's exactly the same, isn't it? Well, you can almost say that about everything. If we talk about the department folders, let's say there's a production folder because there's a production department. You have manager users, you have worker users, lecturers, students. If I actually just change the names again, change the folder names again, it's almost that example. Maybe slightly different permissions though, but it's pretty much that example, isn't it? So it's that methodology that we're repeating over and over again. Okay, the key thing is global groups represent types of users. Domain local groups represents the resource plus the level of access. Then we have printers. Oh, sorry. Before that, we have quotas. Okay, this is, like I said, research. So this is not something we've covered, but like I said, there's things that it's going to be in your workplace, in your everyday professional lives that you're not going to ever be taught. So what happens then? Well, research. Well, in this case, quotas. Sorry, it doesn't. Oh, it does say quotas. So I thought I might have given it away. But quotas. So if I don't know how to do a quota, stop. Okay. If I open up a new thing, how to quota in server 2016. Oh, look, there's a couple of videos, how to set up quotas, quota management, and there's plenty of resources. It's fairly straightforward, okay? Not to say it's absolutely given, but it's fairly easy. And what this is going to demonstrate to me and to yourself, as well as to our assessment, is that you're able to use your own initiative, your own research and research skills and problem solving skills, and be able to find something to help you solve this problem. You get me, guys? So, like I said, if you are basically a robot who can only follow instructions one by one, you're only going to be able to do robot-like tasks, which is usually boring type tasks. If you can show that you got initiative, you get problem solving, you'll probably be given more challenging tasks, more interesting tasks in the workplace. Sorry, getting back to, so then we have the printers. Again, that's similar to what we've done, bits and pieces of the worksheet for. Backups. So the situation is that you've got existing computers. They have existing data. What are you going to do with it? You can't just delete it and start from scratch. That's not right. This is an existing company with valuable file assets. So how are you going to transfer it to the new system? Okay, so how are you going to do it? Suggest how. I'm sure you guys can think of a few ways. This doesn't have to involve any software. It could be as simple as copying to a portable hard drive, or waiting for this file server to be set up and giving them a share that they can access and copying their valuable files to a location. Whatever you suggest, as long as it's logical and reasonable and can actually work. And now this is a backup strategy. So we've spoken about how to back up, that's fine, but the software of actually backing up is just one part of it. A policy, a strategy, or how we do it, and if it's written up, everyone knows it, they know what their tasks are. You need to actually work out a strategy that is going to back up the user's home directories, the company data, as well as Active Directory. That's what the strategy is, okay? So maybe we know the Active Directories is part of the system state. We know the file server has the files. We know the file server might have the home directories. So maybe instead of selecting everything to back up, we'll select the Active Directory or the system state on the domain controller, and we'll do the home directory in there. And we might do what's called a generational backup strategy, where we have the child daily backups, the full weekly backups, and full monthly backups. Maybe the daily backups we keep for a week, the weekly backups we keep for a month, and the monthly backups we keep for a year, which gets us back to restoring data up to 12 months old. That's just one example. Testing procedure. Maybe the testing procedure could be that we randomly select a monthly backup every 2 months, and we restore it to an alternate location, and we inspect the files are correct and uncorrupted. That could be the testing procedure. Because what's worse than not having backup is having a backup you believe in and realizing that it didn't actually work where you needed it. But having a backup and you keeping it on the same site, having a backup and keeping it on the same site is better than no backup at all. But really, if you're keeping it on the same site, what if your whole site, something affects your whole site? Like there's a fire in the server room and that's where your server plus the backup tapes are. It's all gone then, isn't it? So having a off-site backup. So what media? So mediums. So mediums means what you're going to store it on. Tape, portable hard drives. What is it? For on-site, it could be tapes. It could be portable hard drives. It could be wherever. Off-site, it could be portable hard drives you take off-site physically, or it could be the cloud these days. Okay. And what backup software you can use? Obviously, we've got the Windows backup, but if you're in your research, if you decide that, hey, we need this piece of hardware, and this piece of hardware comes with this backup software, then that's what you have to put down, okay? And same with the hardware. So we're going to go with dedicated hardware or any extra hardware you're going to purchase. I suggest that you probably would need some more hardware, because if you're backing up to your servers, it's really, if it's on the same servers, it's not really that good, is it? Then we configure Microsoft backup on the Active Directory so that the Active Directory is backed up automatically every day at 3 a.m. It stores it on the file server. So that's the only part where I asked you to configure the backups, okay? The other part is just the plan. This is just the configuration. And when it says Active Directory, I do not want to see anything else besides the system state backed up. Because what does that suggest to me? It does suggest to me you don't understand what contains the Active Directory. If you back up everything on a server, sure, you grab the Active Directory, but it shows me that maybe you don't understand it well enough to understand that I don't want everything. I just want the Active Directory. Because if you back up everything, it's going to be a lot bigger, and not required. So that's what I want to see. Okay, so for testing purposes, you'll install and create a Windows 8 virtual machine, and you'll get some corporate data there. Okay, so corporate data. Sorry, where do I put this? Okay, I think I've got it somewhere, but it doesn't matter. You basically on the Windows 8.1 machine just create this directory structure, and to be honest, just for this activity, just put some random files in there. Okay, not big ones, little ones, so that you have something to back up. I can give you an example of this data, but right this second I can't remember where I put it. So as far as we're concerned, you can just put any data. That's what I've done really. Back up this corporate data on your Windows 8.1. Restore this data to your file server. Okay, just that's like that situation where you've actually suggested this is how we're going to back up your current data. You use that strategy to back it up, put it on the file server. And we need to back up user settings on the Windows 8.1 and restore it to the new Windows 10. So remember that part of it is the upgrading from 8.1 to 10 as well. So how would I back up settings? So again, this is a bit of a research. And I would be going how to back up user settings on Windows. And okay, so here's some instructions. Free methods for copying user profile. You can take any one of these, but I would say maybe look into USMT. What is USMT? User State Migration Tool. Okay, so work out how to use it. Okay, like I said, it's research. So you're taking resources that you can find elsewhere and taking the instructions and putting it into practice. Again, that initiative, that self autonomy and that self-reliance. The WSUS, fairly straightforward, exactly the worksheet on WSUS really, except that it's called something different. It might have a different IP address, but effectively you're installing WSUS, you're downloading the updates, you're configuring the group policy objects so that your clients use the WSUS to download updates, and that's about it. DHCP server, if you remember, we have a worksheet on DHCP, installing DHCP server, configuring a scope with these settings, and ensuring that our client computers can get an IP address, and creating a reservation with that MAC address for that IP address for your Windows 10. The DNS part, again, that worksheet on DNS and DHCP has it. You already have DNS if you have Active Directory, but you may need to create a reverse lookup zone, which is IP addresses to names. And in that, you need to create a host record for the servers and the clients. And if you actually join them to the domain, they get automatically created. You need to create an alias. If you need to create alias, if you remember that administering services, if we look at this worksheet, so this is not the alias we're talking about today with the PowerShell. This is alias in DNS, and if you look at that, there you go. Different name, different computer, different IP address maybe, but instructions. Here's the password policy. So if you remember, we did that worksheet on password policies again. So that will allow you to create this. It's not even the fine-grained password policy. It's just the default domain policy that you edit. And then if you look at what we did today, we sort of did this. If you remember, in the second worksheet on the Windows 10, we're going to join the domain. Sorry, we're going to configure the IP addressing to be obtaining IP address automatically. We're going to join the domain. We're going to create a new folder. We're going to give full control to everyone, share it, give full control with everyone. We're going to disable inheritance, and then we're going to copy all the files from this to this, and this is going to be a script. So today we're doing that. Work out the commands or commandlets you need to do this. It's pretty much finding a bit from here, from a bit from there, and if anything's missing, do a bit of research. And this client is basically the Windows 10 client. You need to connect it to the domain. You need to map these drives, install the printers. I think that's all in the worksheets as well. You can do it anyhow you want to, as long as they're connected. And then we have that standard operating environment. So basically download these applications. So PDF reader, I'm sure you can find that somewhere. VLC media player, you can find that from somewhere. The Microsoft Office 365, you can just go to your portal from the TAFE SA, go to your Office 365 and download an installation copy for yourself. Okay, so if you're wondering, here, so this is my email, Office 365, and there it is. And then if I want to install a local copy, I got the install Office here, which will download the installation files, and I can install it. Okay. Display a legal notice during logons. So this again requires you to do a bit of research. So again, if I was doing that part, I didn't know how to do it. How to display notice on logon in Windows 10. Show custom message at logon screen. Show custom message, here it is. Maybe I will go and use these instructions again, or using this other method number 2, and actually create it. Okay, so just a bit of research. And now, again, sharing a folder, research EFS, encrypted file system, and turning that folder into file system, and then repeat that for the Windows 8 virtual machine as well. With the performance monitor, if you remember, we looked at the performance monitor worksheet, and it basically asks you to, create a benchmarking strategy. If you remember, benchmarking was measuring the performance. So what counters are you going to include? So if you look at our PowerPoint, we suggested some counters. Maybe that's the starting point. So usually we would have counters from CPU, memory, disk, and network, at least some from each. And how long will you monitor it for? When will you monitor it? So if you just freshly built this network and you want to get an adequate benchmark, maybe you could monitor it 3 times a day for 5 minutes. So maybe 9:30, 1 p.m., 4 p.m., just so it's spread out the day, and we'll monitor it for maybe 10 minutes, and we'll do it every day for a week. What about in the future? Okay, so every day for a week, but in the future, we'll repeat this every 6 months. Then we compare it, and we can see if there's the usage or utilization or the performance is adequate, and is there any changes. Now here, you actually just then do it. You use the performance monitor tool, create a user-defined data set, add those counters in, do it for 5 minutes, and then from that you work out what the minimum, average, and maximum is. I think it's just a matter of copying in the details of it. So, well, have a look, see if you look at the minimums, averages, and stuff like that. Obviously, if 100% is max utilization, what is your utilization? Is it sufficient? Is it coping with the demands on that virtual machine or server right now? I'm guessing it probably would, because I'm guessing that your servers, even though they're servers, they're actually not doing much at all at that stage. user documentation. So basically now, so here's some standards of our documentation. So you notice all my worksheets sort of look and feel the same, don't they? All of the ones that you've opened up that I've created all look similar, has the same sections. Some sections are often the same ones all over and over again because then but the good thing about that is that you always know I go to this section to find out what files or resources I need. I go to this section to actually work out the to perform the tasks. But you get to know the look and feel about it, and you know how to use it. So basically, for your documentation in your workplace, that should be something similar, as in not necessarily exactly the same layout, but something similar as in a consistent look and feel. So for our documentation standards, and if this was your workplace, it must contain a title page for any documents you create, must contain a table of contents, it must have page number, it must use Calibri font, in each section must be clearly named and bolded, and must include screenshots as well as descriptions. So with that in mind, create a document that will instruct or show the users how to log into the domain, where to store their workgroup data. So we're talking about that situation where you're handing over to your clients. You built this network, you're giving it over to your clients. Are they expected to know exactly how things work straight away? Possibly not. So this document is meant to show them how it is, how to encrypt a folder, and the document should include step-by-step instructions on how to do these things, and it should follow the organizational document standards. Troubleshooting. If you look at this error, if you research this error, analyze what it means. If we have a closer look at the error, the domain join cannot complete because the SID of the domain you are attempting to join was identical to the SID of this machine. Do you remember us talking about this before? Are you serious? Have we not mentioned SID? So what's the problem when you do a clone? Yeah, exactly. And if you try to join a domain with a machine with the same SID, this is the error message you'll get. Okay? So if we know about that, without even doing much research, how do we fix it? How do we fix this identical SID problem? How? Sysprep, good one. Okay, so if you didn't know that, go research it. But I think I've mentioned it numerous times now. So what tools did you use? Sysprep probably is a tool in your case. Maybe if you had some other way, then sure, put that tool down. And if you remember, we did use this PS Get SID tool, didn't we? Okay, where was that located? Let's go to our L drive. ITS 5 ICW, and it's part of this PS tools, if you remember. There's a PS Get SID exe that's in here, and you would just run it on your computers. And basically, I want you to run it on your computers and show me the SID as a output here. So now this requires you a bit of writing. So you talk about how cloning, what is cloning? That's virtual machine cloning, that is. And why is it a benefit? How is it better? How long would it take compared to creating a new virtual machine from scratch? So that's why we did the Golden Master, didn't we? And what is the difference between the time? So hopefully you'll realize it's actually going to be a lot faster. Then the completion report. Well, if you're complete with this project, who should you inform? Who's the stakeholder in this project? In this scenario so far, who you've been dealing with? Who am I role-playing? What's his name? Emily? For Evans, exactly right. That's the stakeholder. Always know your stakeholder because they're the one that's going to actually be affected by the outcome of this project, and they're usually the one that's going to pay you. Okay? What cleanup tasks are you going to do? Like, for example, if you were doing this in the real workplace, you probably had hardware delivered, you unpacked them, you racked up the hardware, you probably configured this, you had configured that, you have cables here and cables there, and you probably have a whole bunch of temporary files you might have put places. Could you think of a couple of things you need to do to tidy up. You don't want to leave your client's premises a mess after you finish your work. So maybe packing away the recycling the boxes and whatnot, tidying up the cable runs, not like that, but tidy. Delete any temporary files? Just some examples. I'm sure you can think of a few more. Who should get the final sign off from? Who should give you the big thumbs up if you've done a good job? Sorry? Stakeholder, right. That's right. That's that Evans Erfel. Or Erfel Evans. I forgot. But basically, that's what you need to do, okay? So basically, this next section is, again, another recording. Just pretend you're leaving a message, okay? Just to tell the stakeholder the status of the project. Obviously, at this stage, you should be completed. Maybe you should mention how you've tested it to confirm that it's all working correctly. And obviously, probably suggest that way for maybe suggest that the stakeholder or someone from the stakeholder test it for themselves, and if they're satisfied, that you would like to seek final sign-off for the project to say it's complete. Because until you get that final sign-off, your project's not done. You don't get paid if this was a project work rather than supporting internal clients, okay? And then finally, clean up, and that's basically deleting any files you've left on the TAFE computers. And obviously, if it's your only copy of the virtual machines, do not delete your virtual machines, because it does not mean you've passed just yet. Let's say you've done everything correctly, but you just didn't show me the stuff that I needed to see in order to be ticked off. Then, if you've deleted the virtual machines, it's going to be hard to get those images again, wouldn't it? So don't delete it until I've said you've passed this assignment. All right. So that is the main thing. And if you can do that fairly easily, you should be almost guaranteed to pass a practical test. Because if you look, the practical test is a cut down version of that, meaning that it's a simplified version of that. You're not going to be able to do everything like that in the practical test, but maybe some of the core things like creating users, sharing folders, setting up some services. But if you want to have a if you want to have a go at a sample practical test, there's a sample one right here. And if you look at it, it's actually an older test. Okay, it's a sample practice test because it's older. There'll be a couple of sections that doesn't apply to you guys, but there'll be various sections that do apply to you guys. And obviously, how similar would this be to the real test? I would say it's at least 60% the same. Not exactly the same, as in same folder, same user, same web, everything, but the things you have to do will be similar. And obviously, here it is. I'm not hiding it from you. It's right there. If you've noticed, that's the last worksheet we're working on, the PowerShell worksheet. That's the practice test. And guess what? Here's a sample practice test link. And this is basically me showing another group of students how to do the sample practice test. Yeah, like I said, it's not exactly identical. It covers slightly different topics, some of it, than the one you're going to be doing. But it should give you a taste of what it is. And to be honest, if I was preparing for an exam like this, I would at least do this practical test, look at the video, see if I've done it right. If I realize I haven't done it right, maybe I'll go study up on the parts I got wrong, do it again, and I would be trying to do this sample practice test without needing to refer to any worksheets. Because it is open book when you do it. You're going to have access to all your worksheets that you've been given access to on Learn. Not the videos, but just the worksheets and the PowerPoints. But if you had to look up everything you need to do during the test while you're doing it, you're not going to have enough time. Okay, you're going to get, an hour and a half. But if you had to look everything up, you'll run out of time very quickly. So I would be preparing by doing it so that I don't need to access the worksheets to do some of the common tasks. Maybe refer to it if I do get stuck, if I had something that I did forget, but I would be trying to do all of it without needing the worksheets at all. if we go on to the next part, this is where we're gonna, when you come back, this is where we're gonna do the worksheet. Do the practical test. Here it is. It's right there. That's a file, but unfortunately, it's not published to you guys. So it's going to be a bit of a surprise when you come back. But like I said, it's going to be based on the work from your assignment. If you can do that, you probably can do this. And there's also a sample theory test. So for this theory test, is a very straightforward one, but here's a sample to give you a taste of it again. But it's going to be multiple choice. If you probably have common sense and some basic knowledge on what we've been talking about, you're probably going to do well. I would say the MTA test that you're going to have is a lot harder than this sample theory test. This is just basically getting us the knowledge evidence that we need from that we can't cover in the assignments, or too hard to cover in the assignments. So that's what we're going to try to prepare ourselves before we come back. So with the MTA, if you remember, we have the geometrics, the LearnKey course. So if you remember geometrics, sign in, and at this stage you would have added operating system fundamentals as well as the server fundamentals to your course. You would have these sessions, these topics, and tomorrow before you go, I'm going to give you the practice tests, the vouchers for the practice tests, and basically a bit like the MOS practice test in the sense that you can do that. It's a bit like these pre and post assessments anyway. It's like, but you can do it like in a training mode or in testing mode, so you can actually prepare for it. So use this for the passing MTA, use the worksheets and the PowerPoints for passing your TAFE assessments. So we'll leave it there, and I've hopefully captured this video so that anyone who missed this can actually look at it later, or maybe after you've had a great Christmas and you want to start working on it again, that you might need to actually review it.